What is the single most you'll understand it when you're older thing? Health issues. I know I've been genetically lucky, but after 20, random crap just starts happening for no reason. It's like Daryl developing a soy allergy at 35. Who develops a soy allergy at 35? Understanding why your parents wanted you to go play with the awkward kid, or why they were so keen to help you make friends. It's beyond annoying as a kid when your parents try to guide who make friends with, but most parents instinctually know that bad social habits start early, are hard to break, and can be a real burden when you are older. Friendships fading away. I remember my dad telling me all kinds of cool stories about things him and his friends did in the past. I even asked him, why aren't you still friends with these people? He really did basically say, it's complicated. You'll understand when you're older. Even back then I remember thinking, that's crazy. Me and my friends will always be friends. Sitting here now in my early 30s and it really hits home. Losing best friends is the hardest. Time off. Working crazy hours in my early 20s was nice because I had a lot of money, but as I became older and more involved with my now fiance and my friends, I realized that there's a balance. This drove me to look for a job with a little less pay but far better hours, and now I'm happy. Don't work like a slave. You'll miss a lot of good things in life. Just did that. Will be working 40 hours a week again instead of 80 hours average. The quiet, boring, simple times are the best. Everyone's fed, happy, healthy, chill, napping. These are the good times. Very true. It is possible to do everything right and still fail. Don't let it consume you. Pick up the pieces and move on. I had to learn this after a project that I was on for 3 years was sabotaged and shitcanned. I did some amazing work and poured my life into that project. In the end I had nothing to show for it. It put me in a real slump for a few years. I'm still trying to pull myself out of it without becoming a cynical and jaded butthole. Data learned this lesson from Captain Jean-Luc Picard, and so did I. Whoa. Thanks for my first awards. For people still wondering, the episode this occurs in is season 2 episode 21, Peak Performance. Hand-me-downs. I absolutely hated them, even though my grandma was a genius with them. Dyeing, artistic patches, new buttons. They just didn't last compared to the new clothes my older sister had. Then I had 3 boys in 6 years. I'm seriously grateful that my grandma tried so hard to make my hand-me-downs look good. I get it now. Time. Wasting time. And how time flies. It's mid-deck and I'm saying to myself, what the heck, it's been 9 months of COVID and I can't believe this year is almost over. As you age it seems to go faster and faster. When I was younger I felt like time just dragged on some days. Why my parents would look disgusted eating drinking anything that was sweet. I never understood why they watered down juice until now. Something a little more lighthearted, but about half the jokes on cartoons like SpongeBob take on a whole new light once you've got more experience under your belt. You either die a SpongeBob or live long enough to become a Squidward. What parents sacrifice just so you can do something fun? Last night my husband and I sat in a line of cars for an hour and a half so our kids could see this cheesy drive-through light display in my town with Santa and other characters. 0/10 not worth it for us, but the kids loved it and it was worth it to see them be able to do a fun Christmas activity during a pandemic. It made me think of how much my parents had to endure taking my brother and I to theme parks and stuff as a kid just to see us happy. I appreciate it infinitely more now. Literally getting older. Never thought much about when adults would say you're still young. Just enjoy it. I always wanted to be older because I was tired of HS. Wanted to be out of college, etc. Now I want aging to slow down a bit. Teenagers are just kids. It's something I quite literally was not capable of understanding until I wasn't a teenager anymore. When I was a teenager I felt so grown up. And how sometimes, some adults are just kids in adult bodies. Or how adults are simply just flawed human beings too. Used to look up to adults for what's right and wrong, but as we grew older, we kind of realized that adults such as our parents are simply just flawed human beings and they may not know it all too either. In my teens and 20s, I just couldn't understand how my parents were so oblivious to celebrities. They were all over TV, their names and faces blasted on everything. It seemed everybody had some strong emotionally charged opinion about every major actor, musician, director, or tabloid magnate. What are they, living under a rock? Didn't take long to find out why. Growing up, I didn't have a pre-existing list of these are famous people. I learned them as they came onto the scene. Eventually, though, they all dropped off the list one by one. The list kept updating. It's a lot harder knowing who is a household name when you also have to know who is last week's news. I was only 30 when I realized I have no idea who famous people are anymore. I just couldn't keep up at all. I've become like my parents. Don't know, and honestly, don't care. Celebrity worship, even as cursory as simply knowing their names, is a vapid, fruitless endeavor. Today's idols are tomorrow's trash. I have not experienced this with movie TV folks, but in the last 2 or 3 years it seems like all of the musicians on the pop station have been replaced. I used to know who sang just about every new song I liked. Now I'm lucky to guess 1 in 10. Things simply just don't work out. A job, a partner, sometimes family, and friends. The most well-intended people just don't always work out. Love. I thought I loved my wife when I was 20. Now I am 50 and we have been together over 30 years. I realize now that when I was 20 I didn't understand what love is. I hope 70-year-old me looks back on 50-year-old me and says the same thing. There's really no going back, you really just get one shot with each hour you get. Just have to make your peace with the choice path you took and keep it moving. This is giving me quite a lot of anxiety, lol. King Triton, Ariel's dad was right. She was just a child and she was not in love with the random prince she saw for all of 30 seconds. That everything has shades of grey is a sliding scale. It is so easy to understand the world as absolutes when young. Suddenly realizing in my late teens early 20s that basically nothing is an absolute was a total revelation that really steers my understanding of everything and undoubtedly makes me a better person. There are way too many adults who never realize this. Money. There was a reason that you didn't get those shoes, the PS5, a new shiny car, etc. Maintaining a home and keeping the family fed is freaking expensive. The whole buying a home thing blew me away. I didn't realize how much money there was in upkeep on a home. I've lived in my home for 3 years now and had to replace the roof, furnace, and washer altogether costing close to 10k. Not all people have your best interests at heart. People will take advantage of your kindness and compassion. And finally, that everyone else's problems are not your own. You can try to help people but they have to want to help themselves. Some of them want to abuse you, some of them want to be abused. On a positive note, there is a freedom to being a grown-up that I didn't grasp as a kid. Just last week, a 4th grader posited the question, "What's it like to be grown up?" My co-teacher and I started to laugh and I said, "Well, it's got its up and downs." Kid asked, "Is it boring to pay bills?" I replied, "Well, that's definitely a down and it's not really boring." I searched in my head for something positive and came up with, "Did you know what? I can go to Arby's pretty much any time I want." So there's that, and thus erupted a Zoom screen full of kids in wonder that yes, as a grown up, you may be able to get Arby's pretty much whenever you want. I even said something like, "You'll understand when you're a grown up and have a car but it's pretty cool." And you know what? It is pretty cool. A parent's love for their child. A year after my granddaughter was born, my daughter was telling me how wonderful her toddler is, how smart she is, and just all around lovable she is. She then said, "I don't think I could ever love anyone as much as I love my daughter." Then she paused for a moment as realization washed over her face. "Dad, is this how much you love me?" Bingo, kiddo. Now you know. When I was a kid I watched my mom and dad refuse to let my grandparents pay for something or pay them back for something. I thought that was silly as a kid and said I wouldn't do that. But as an adult I find myself always doing the same thing I said I never would. I really relate to this one. My granddad is super generous when it comes to his kids and grandkids. He loves to buy us gifts and the younger ones love it while the rest of us are like, "Nah man, let me take care of that. You've done your part getting this family this far. It's our turn now." All these comments about money and managing your finances make me kinda sad considering I was the opposite. I had to mature at a really young age because of my deadbeat waste of space father milking my mother's purse dry. She had nobody to vent to and very soon I became her confidant. At 8 years old, I don't blame her. She was struggling and needed someone, and if anything we're as close as we are now because of it, but now I'm left with constant anxiety whenever she's a little low for the month and willingly let her pile her issues onto me even if I regret it. After, I wish more than anything I could have had just a few more years to be a normal child. Oh well. I'm sorry. I lost my mom August 2020. I can sincerely say that I feel like I've learned more in the last 3 months than I have in my entire life. I've gone from someone who thought being right and doing the right thing was the most important thing to understanding that being kind, loving, compassionate and empathetic is so much more important. Always choose love. You will never regret it, ever. The power of your peers. One of the gifts of middle age is you finally stop caring so much about what everyone else thinks of what you're doing, largely because you realize other people no longer care, if they ever did in the first place. Once that veil lifts, everything feels different, but until then you really have no idea how much what you decide or want has had to do with pleasing the people around you, trying to fit in with them, or at least avoiding their ire. Also, as you have the veil lifted on a few close friends' problems, you begin to realize everyone else's life may not be as great as it looks. How stupid you are right now. People tend to think they're pretty knowledgeable and wise at any given moment in their life. But then you age a decade and look back and think, wow, I was such an idiot. How did I not realize how much of a douchebag I was being and other such things? Then you'll think I'm glad I'm better now. Now I'm pretty knowledgeable and wise. Then another decade passes. One of my favorite phrases is, I'm just old and wise enough to realize how young and stupid I still am. Garbage man, bus driver, toll booth worker, those are good jobs. Plumber, mechanic, machinist, those are great jobs. Kids in my high school thought that's the kind of job you get when you fail in life. No, those people are doing fine. And if you don't get your crap together, you'll be wishing you were doing so well. The value of discipline. You might have all the brains or potential in the world, but without discipline, everything you hold dear to you, all the smarts that you use to validate yourself as an excuse, is snatched away within the blink of an eye. It might have been cool to embody the character of that stereotypical lazy whiz kid, who gets things done when needed, when you were younger, perhaps as an adolescent, as you'd have liked to think that you'd pull it off the same. Years pass by, the laziness, the lack of effective principles starts to take a toll unless reversed. Incompetency sets in. Lethargy is a hobby. Time management is a joke. Priorities are misplaced. Personal relationships are ruined. And perhaps your lack of discipline might also spiral you into substance abuse. Abuse, not drugs in general, or other addictions, kickstarting a vicious cycle of pain and suffering. Mom and dad die eventually. Share what's going on in your life. Call them. Visit often. When they die you will wish you did. I have talked with my dad almost every day of my life the last 17 years. I love it. Phases. There is nothing more patronizing or even insulting than someone older say what you think or are doing as some sort of phase you are going through, that you'll change your mind later, etc. No one should ever do that. However, when you approach middle age, you realize just how many times in your life you thought you had it all figured out, even if it meant you had decided nothing makes sense and you have no idea who you really are, and then totally changed your mind, or at least amended your philosophies. The problem is that you never know what will be a phase and what will become a defining identity for their entire life, so it's better not to dismiss any of them as phases to their face. Plenty of 50-year-old communists, vegan activists, tennis obsesses and goths definitely were mocked for those phases for years. What it truly feels like when your body starts to give out on you. It's so freaking subtle and sneaky. It feels like your body is gaslighting you, like the rules of nature and the universe, according to all of your experience up to this point, have suddenly been thrown out the window. For the first time in a long time you find yourself asking how long is it going to take to get better, and you have no freaking idea anymore. This is morbid, but when people decide to die, like, I never understood why someone would kill themselves. Now I understand that the well of pain and loneliness is just too much for some. All of the times young people cringe at older people embarrassing themselves. Once you realize the futility of keeping up with societal pressures, cringing at others becomes a hallmark of immaturity. Responsibility. Getting older increases it, from expectations and interdependence. You'll never be more free of responsibility than when you're a kid, and while you're a kid you can't wait to outgrow it. I used to think that my parents were incredibly boring, and I guess they were and are. But now that I'm knocking on the door of 40, I'm tired, like, all of the time. I prefer life to be boring and stable because I don't want to deal with unpleasant surprises. Even pleasant surprises can be draining. Just leave me alone to live in peace and quiet, and I will be as close to happy as is possible. Just because you love someone doesn't mean you should be together. I always grew up thinking that it was really dumb for people to break up if they loved each other, but since my last relationship I've realized that sometimes love is just not enough. Sometimes you have to love yourself just a bit more. A number of negative behaviors I associated with age made more sense to me as I realized how much more tired I was at 40 than at 20, even from doing exactly the same things. Inflexibility about plans, irritation with noise distractions, shortness in dealing with frustrations, ossifying political and personal beliefs. They all just feel more tempting when you're exhausted and don't want to sink time and energy into arguments, explanations, or replanning things. It's not an excuse. I work hard to avoid those things now that I can see that biological forces will keep pushing me toward them. But man, it's a real battle sometimes when you just want a peaceful night without some other damn thing that needs you to work on it. Love. When you're young you have this delusional view of what love should be, especially because the sample size of it had been given unconditionally up until your first heartbreak. Turns out you've got to earn it differently for every prospect you meet. Your version of the love you can give is not for everyone. That adults hitting kids isn't normal. I grew up in an extremely abusive home and was actively taught it was everyone treated their kids like this. I believed it and never told anyone about what happened at home until I was 19. When I had kids of my own, I thought I would have to fight myself to not hurt them because I didn't want to be like my parents. But I didn't. I could never say or do the things to my kids that my parents did to me. I will never. My parents are no longer a part of my life and will never be a part of my children's lives again. My children will never see abuse as normal. That episode of Phineas and Ferb where there was a Doofenshmirtz flashback where his girlfriend left him for a boy with bigger fingers. 1. People aren't going to like you and that's fine. 2. Other people aren't responsible for your mental health. And perhaps more importantly, you are not responsible for other people's mental health. You don't feel like an adult so much as someone winging their way through adulthood, and then you realize that everyone else is winging it too. Enjoy the time you have, like seriously enjoy it. Take pictures when you're in middle school and high school. I maybe have a total of 15 pictures with friends from HS. Why? BCI felt like it was going to last forever. Did it? Nope. Thankfully because of social media and younger people having phones they're able to stay in contact. But when I was younger and playing Xbox 360 I had a lot of online friends who said I'll be on tomorrow and were never on. I miss them. Just really enjoy your joy. Take pictures, because time will fly. Life is fair, but not in the way you think. The laws of nature are fair in that they don't care about your intentions or morals or anything like that. They do what they do despite what you think it should do. The example I like to use is if you fall off a 200-story building. It doesn't matter if you slipped or if you jumped or if you were pushed. You're still going to die. Grabs water bucket not today Satan. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.